concerning the information that psychiatric judgments convey about issues relevant to a civil commitment proceeding, Innes and Litwack write, "It is our contention that psychiatric diagnoses often convey more inaccurate than accurate information about an individual, and that a diagnosis suggests that the individual manifests the range of symptoms associated with that diagnosis when, in fact, the individual may exhibit only one or even none of those symptoms." On the one hand, the label psychosis, for example, tells us that the patient presumably exhibits one of 5 symptoms, which could just as easily be described directly without using the diagnostic label. On the other hand, it tells us nothing about the individual's potential dangerousness, the expected duration of his or her condition, whether it can be treated, and, if so, how. Moreover, it does not purport to tell us whether the individual is friendly or unfriendly, cooperative or uncooperative, happy or depressed. In short, the diagnosis itself answers none of the questions that conceivably could be important to a judge or jury in a civil commitment proceeding. Indeed, though a diagnosis of psychosis by definition indicates that an individual's mental functioning is sufficiently impaired to interfere grossly with his or her capacity to meet the ordinary demands of life, that definition is essentially meaningless because psychiatrists know basically psychotic individuals who continue to meet the ordinary demands of life and non-psychotic individuals who fail utterly to measure up to this criterion. For years, homosexuality was listed in DSM-2 as a subcategory of personality disorders. Recently, however, the APA decided by vote that homosexuality should no longer be considered a mental illness. If all that is needed to remove large numbers of individuals from the ranks of the mentally ill and grant them the status enjoyed by the rest of society is a vote by the APA, then surely other diagnostic labels are also highly suspect. It should be obvious, then, that psychiatric diagnoses do not convey much meaningful information. In fact, since diagnoses such as psychosis or schizophrenia have scare word qualities, they often misleadingly suggest to a judge or jury that the individual should be committed to a hospital. Even more serious is the label dangerousness, which almost certainly prejudices judges and juries without conveying any meaningful information, such as whether the individual is likely to cause physical injury or injury to property, or whether the only danger is that he eats too little or embarrasses himself at his job. There is no reason to believe that psychiatrists can determine who is mentally ill or predict who requires involuntary care and treatment any more reliably and accurately than they can make other diagnoses and predictions. We have found no evidence that the judgment of who is mentally ill or who requires care and treatment can be reliably and accurately made by anyone. In the present state of knowledge, commitment on these grounds is of necessity a completely arbitrary act. Again, this was the state of psychiatry as of 1974, and given how the APA tried to sweep these controversial issues under the rug with the publication of the DSM-3 in 1980, there is no reason to believe that these issues do not persist still to this day. And I had other points I wanted to add regarding involuntary commitment outside of this article, but I'll wait until next time. I hope to see you there.